Hello, and welcome back to the Outdoor Minimalist Podcast. I'm your host, Meg Carney, and I'm an outdoor and environmental writer and author of the book Outdoor Minimalist: Waste Less Hiking, Camping, and Backpacking, set to be released on September 1st, 2022. The Outdoor Minimalist Podcast has a goal to give listeners actionable ways to waste less while they're hiking, camping, backpacking, and more during every step of their process. Your impact outdoors starts long before you hit the trail and goes beyond leave no trace ethics. You'll learn how to identify sustainable outdoor brands, how to ask hard questions regarding sustainability, and begin to shift and evolve your mindset to integrate minimalism into all of your outdoor pursuits. In this episode of the Outdoor Minimalist Podcast, we will be discussing the fourth R within the 7 R's of outdoor minimalism, which is repair. If you don't know what the first 3 R's include, they are reduce, refuse, and rethink. For a full overview of all 3 of those and how they conceptually relate to outdoor minimalism, I recommend jumping back and listening to episode 2. This includes an in-depth description of all of those concepts. Now, when we talk about the concept of repairing and how it fits into outdoor minimalism and outdoor recreation, we also have to understand the underlying purpose of repairing anything. We're fixing a problem that made that item difficult, if not impossible, to use. Now, there's a lot to be said about how to repair outdoor gear, so I'll likely make repair into a series within the podcast to break it down into more detail. But for this episode, we're going to focus on how repairing gear applies to the concept of outdoor minimalism and why it's important to implement more repair options into the outdoor industry production model. To help me do that, I'd like to introduce today's guest, Rudy Glocker. Rudy is the owner and founder of Burgeon Outdoors. Rudy founded Burgeon to create a better tomorrow for mountain communities such as Lincoln, New Hampshire, where they're located. Burgeon accomplishes its mission by making its products locally and contributing 5% of its sales to environmental and community efforts. You can learn more about them at www.burgeonoutdoor.com, and I'll link that in the episode description. So welcome to the Outdoor Minimalist Podcast, Rudy, and thank you for taking time out of your schedule to chat today.
It's great to be here, Meg. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on your podcast and looking forward to having a little bit of fun with it.
Yeah, so today we are going to kind of focus on the topic of repair, but before we jump into that, if you could tell us a little bit about you and your background outdoors and how Burgeon got started, that would be great for the listeners.
Sure, Meg. So I was fortunate when I was a child to basically have a family that went skiing and hiking. So we went skiing every winter and hiking every summer up in the New England region mainly. So, I was on skis when I was 5. I probably hiked Mount Washington for the first time when I was 7 years old or somewhere in that neighborhood. I don't really remember. But really always enjoyed the outdoors. And as I kind of grew in my life and did some different things, I ended up being in Boston for a number of years and found myself spending a ton of time in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Probably 30 weekends a year I was up there hiking, skiing, doing something. And it just really cemented my love of the place, as I'm sure many of your listeners have, where you kind of grow an attachment to an area just because you have so many great memories and there's so many wonderful things to do. The idea for Burgeon came because as I was recreating in these areas, I was kind of looking around, and what I thought was really interesting was that a lot of the gear, for lack of a better term, whether it be backpacks or clothing or shoes, etc., none of it was really made there. And as I kind of looked around, I always kind of thought, why? For the listeners who don't know, New England has a very rich background in manufacturing, specifically in the textiles area. There's a strong work ethic and pride that people take in what they do. And as I was trying to think of a way to create a sustainable business that benefited mountain communities, I settled on apparel as a way to do that because a lot of the infrastructure, though very latent, was there at one point, and there's still some remnants of it on which I could use to grow Burgeon Outdoor into the company that is today, and hopefully what it will be coming in the future.
Yeah, that's a really interesting concept, and I didn't know all that about New England and its history in textiles, so that is very interesting as well. So Rudy and I first connected when I was writing an article about Burgeon Outdoors, and so I learned a lot about the company from that initial interview. But for the listener's sake, something that really stuck out to me was their focus on sustainability, but sustainability in terms of production as well as community and working with their employees. So, would you be able to expand on those aspects of your company?
Absolutely. So we think about sustainably in a holistic way. So yes, we try to use recycled polyester whenever we can, and organic cotton, and a lot of things that other companies are doing. But we also view sustainability as a way to not only run a sustainable business, but help create a sustainable resource where we live. If you think about, the great outdoors, whether it's the White Mountains of New Hampshire or the Wasatch Range in Utah or, a national park in California, they're amazing resources if we take care of them. But they need a lot of, they need a lot of love, right? There's a lot to maintain them, to preserve them, and to sustain them. And so as I went about founding Burgeon, I really wanted to create a holistic business model. And as what we say is, we invest in our people, we invest in the environment, and we invest in the social fabric of the community where we're located. And what that means is, yes, we make our products there. And as you mentioned, we donate 5% of our sales to our environmental and community efforts. But those are things, for instance, we do trail maintenance because that's important to preserve a great resource. We work with local charities who help get people outside, such as New England Disabled Sports and others. And we view sustainability as not only that the products we put out in the world is sustainable, but that our business model is adding to the sustainability of the resources that people come to the White Mountains to use, and enriches the social fabric of those communities by making them great places to live, to visit, to work, to do different things. So sustainability for us is not just about the product, it's about the process and about what the company's trying to achieve.
That's a pretty amazing, I don't know, like company model, I guess, that I haven't necessarily seen done in a lot of other outdoor industry companies. I think I've seen it in maybe one or two, but like holistic sustainability is a really good term to put on that. One part of your company, as far as sustainability goes, is the environmental sustainability. It would be interesting to talk about the community and employee aspects a little bit more, but today I kind of want to focus on the environmental aspect. And recently I was reading a report by Greenpeace, and they were saying that 2.1 billion metric tons of greenhouse gases are produced in the apparel industry. So, not textiles as a whole, but just apparel. And that about 80 billion pieces of clothing are being produced globally each year. But by extending the life of clothing by just 9 months of active use, or the equivalent of 1 to 2 usage seasons, that it could reduce the total carbon emitted from that waste and water footprint by 20 to 30%. One part of your business model at Burgeon Outdoor is that you have a repair business. I guess, is it a business in your production line?
It's a business, yes. We do repairs for people. Luckily, we haven't had to repair too many of our own products, but we do those, basically free of charge unless somebody really mutated something. But then we also do a business where, we have business where you walk in off the street and you have, somebody else's jacket and it needs a new zipper, or, you need a patch on it because you tore it on a tree and your waterproof, jacket's no longer as waterproof as it used to be. So we do that for customers, both for individuals. And the other thing that's interesting about it is, Meg, what happened the last year is when other businesses in town, so, in theory, our competitors, sometimes they get products that need repairs because the zippers were faulty or things like that. So we take those quote unquote brand new products and fix them and then give them back to our competitors, so that you don't have to ship them back for repairs, or they just get thrown out or wasted, and things like that. So we view repairs as part of that holistic approach. As you mentioned, if you can just wear a jacket an extra year and you just think, let's just say you have 5 jackets, well, that's, in theory, that's like your 20% reduction right there if we can get an extra year out of something. So it's a real critical part of the way we view our holistic sustainability.
And one thing I think that often kind of gets neglected in terms of repair that you kind of touched on is that our items that we're buying should be more durable in the first place. So our company's making them in a way that allows a customer to actually use that item for years and years, or are they being produced to be replaced so they cannot be repaired?
Yeah, I mean, we see all kinds of garments come through our door. The good news is that, a lot of our competitors are making really high quality garments, and unfortunately, things happen to them. So that's probably, I mean, that's the vast majority of our repair business. To use an example I alluded to earlier, let's just say you're a backcountry skier. You might rip a jacket or a pair of pants on, a tree branch sticking out somewhere. So, we can make that repair. And interestingly enough, we see a lot of stuff that people have had. This has been my favorite jacket. I've been wearing it for 10 years. Can you please help me get 2 more years out of it? And we'll replace a zipper or two because zippers tend to break. So we see a lot of high quality product out there. I think we're a little less fast fashion in the outdoor category because our customers are more demanding. That's just a theory. I have no proof for it. So we haven't seen as much of the, what I'll call fast fashion in the outdoor space, or at least not in the repair business for us. I hope that, that day never comes because, we really want to, I mean, we as Bergen think believing making high quality products is really important. And we hope you can buy a product of ours and use it for the next, 6 or 7 years and not have an issue. But, sometimes accidents happen and we want to be there when it does so you can extend the life of your favorite piece of gear.
Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense. And I'll agree that I've probably mostly experienced really durable items in the outdoor industry, as far as clothing goes, especially. But I also have had experiences where it like maybe could be considered fast fashion. There are outdoor lines that maybe larger retailers try to sell, but most like outdoor savvy buyers wouldn't necessarily gravitate towards those. That'd be more like beginner. They're not sure what to be looking for in the product, would maybe kind of buy into those fast fashion type things. And as far as repairs go, in like your repair business, you said like a lot of zippers and a lot of larger companies were kind of reaching out to you to help keep up with their repairs. But what do you think is the most common repair that you guys see?
Yeah, the most common repair, I would say, I haven't done the math, but I would say that somewhere between 60 and 65% of our repairs involve a zipper. Zippers, as you can imagine on a jacket that you've had, you might, if you have a favorite pocket, you've opened and closed that zipper, hundreds, if not thousands of times. And depending on what you're doing, things can get caught in zippers, whether it's dirt, just different things, the jacket itself or the pair of pants itself. It rips a pocket, things get caught in it. So that's a big culprit that we see. I mean, it's also one for us that in some ways is, I'm not going to say the easiest one to fix, but it's a relatively straightforward fix because we have zippers. So, we have 5-inch zippers and 5.5-inch zippers, and, we actually have whatever on the half-inch from, I don't know, 20 to 30-inch zippers, right? So we can repair jackets, pockets, etc. And that's the number one stress point. The second most stress point after zippers, which is probably, another third of it, is just from people who, just use their products and they end up ripping on something. We have a lot of backcountry skiers and climbers. So you're wearing harnesses, there's, sharp metal objects if you're a climber, and things like that. And, packs and things like that are sliding over. And so we get a lot of tears. So that's kind of, I'd say those probably make up literally, 90% of the repairs that we do. But again, zippers would be number one, followed by, torn garments as, the second most.
Those are probably the types of repairs that I've seen the most on a lot of my gear, but I'm kind of like a DIY type person and I'll try to repair things. I really like sewing. So I'll end up repairing a lot of my clothes or backpacks and things like that. So I don't have a lot of experience sending in materials to be repaired by a company. I think the only time I've done that is with an Osprey backpack that like some of the buckles were broken and I didn't have replacement ones. Do you think a lot of consumers would gravitate towards fixing an item if they knew the company had a repair system like yours in place?
I absolutely think they would, and the evidence that we've seen, would really support that. We had, I mean, just to give you a story from it was last week or the week before. We're not that far away from the Appalachian Trail. So for those listeners out there, the Appalachian Trail basically runs right through Lincoln, and we had a through hiker who was staying at a local hostel and said, geez, my tent fly, my zipper's ripped. I can't use my tent fly. I need to get this thing fixed. So they said, oh, well, you should go see if the guys at Bergen can fix it for you. And so, given it as a thing, we kind of turned it around literally that day. They went down to the coffee shop down the building from us and, had a coffee and a sandwich while we repaired their zipper. And then, lo and behold, the next day, somebody else who was a through hiker who was staying at that hostel was back with another repair. So, I think once people know they can do that, they're very happy to do so. For us to fix, the zipper on that tent fly, I don't remember the number, but, it was like $25 or something like that is what we charged. I don't know what a new tent fly would cost, but, my guess is it was probably 5 or 6 times that. And so, it's a thing that I think people see not only as a great sustainable thing, but also as a great economic thing. Replacing a zipper on a nice ski jacket, which I remember we did for somebody. I don't know what a new ski shell is going to cost this upcoming year with supply issues, but it's hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and we can fix a zipper for like maybe 35 or 40. It's a great deal economically, and it's a great deal sustainably, and that's the win-win kind of situation that we're trying to create at Bergen. You can enjoy the outdoors and be good to the environment, and it doesn't mean that it has to be the most expensive way to do it. It can actually, everybody can win here, and that's important to us.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the economic value of repairing because I do think investing in brand new outdoor equipment isn't always accessible for people, especially if they invested in a high quality brand to begin with. So, looking at repairs as a way to also save yourself some money is a really great insight. Another thing that I kind of wanted to talk about is your timeline as far as repairs go. You mentioned that for those through hikers, you kind of turned around really quickly, which makes sense because they're in town for such a short period of time. But what would the turnaround time look like for a regular customer?
It's going to vary by the nature of the repair, Meg. So, that was a repair that we actually had the equipment and the special tools we need to do to kind of manipulate the zipper and get it out and replace it, and replace. I think, I can't remember exactly what we had to do there, but I just remember we needed a special tool, which we have. There's a woman in our shop who really specializes in this. And so I'll call it if you come in with a level 1 repair, we can turn it around, fairly quickly, like just say in a couple of days, or if it's really urgent, we might be able to do it that day. And then she, at her, for lack of a better term, home workshop, has like, even better or a wider array of tools is maybe a way of saying it. So sometimes it's going to take us, to really repair something at a top-notch way, a week or 10 days. The good news is what a lot of people now have done is they come in at the end of the season with whatever gear they have, and then they'll give it to us and they'll say, look, if you get it to me the next couple, if you get it to me 2 months from now, that's fine, right? If you have to give us a ski jacket in late March, they don't need it again in New England until, November. And so we have a little bit more lead time. So we try to work with our customers. It's disruptive to our manufacturing process, meaning, each repair is kind of like its own job. So what we try to do is we try to do a lot of them at once. But again, that's all messaged to the customer. And if you have an urgent need, then we try to turn it around faster. So that's just, it really just depends on customer demand and kind of what we have going on. Long-winded way of saying, if you bring in a relatively straightforward repair, Meg, we should be able to get it turned around for you in, a couple days to a week. Unless you're a through hiker, then we'll do a better job. And then if it's a more complicated repair, it might take a couple weeks just given that we need to access a different set of tools and devices to make sure that's a top-notch repair.
Seems really, really fast to me. But if you're doing it kind of in batches, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that, I'm not sure if we mentioned this, you may have in your introduction of Bergen Outdoor, but something that maybe not all apparel companies in the outdoor space would necessarily have access to is where you make the clothes is on site. So, like where you sell and make the clothes is in the same place. And so, I think that that kind of ties into your accessibility to repairs with the customers.
It's a huge advantage. Our all the technical know-how is sitting in that room. And what we can do is if you bring in a repair is we can give you an idea from looking at it, you know, about how long it's going to take, so i.e. what it's going to cost. And number two is what's the time frame going to be able to do that. And so, that is a great thing. There are companies out there that offer repair services. And we actually, I don't know if you've ever heard of a company called FXR Racing. They do a lot of snowmobile suits. I don't know what our official title was, but we did their corporate repairs. That was actually a business for us. If you're a snowmobile person in the Northeast United States and you had an FXR suit that needed something repaired, the dealer would actually send it to us, and then we would turn around and send it back to them. So, it does happen in a world like that. You've got to get it to a dealer. They've got to ship it to us. We've got to get it. We have to make sure we understand what needs to be done. We have to do the work. We have to ship it back to the dealer who has to give it back to the customer. So to your point, Meg, even if we turn that repair around within a week, you can easily see how it might take a month by the time everything gets shipped around, which has its own, sustainability impact. So it's really nice when it comes right into our shop because we can kind of give you a really good idea of what's going to need to happen, and the expertise is there. And it also is just a much more efficient process.
Yeah, and I think that it makes sense to accept those really big shipments of repairs, like you're saying, from that snowmobile company. But would people be able to mail things to you to get fixed, or is that strictly something you would only repair if it was a Virgin Outdoor apparel piece?
We would entertain doing repairs for others. The thing is, what I don't want to get into the world is over promising what's going to happen when you send it to us. Because if we haven't talked about it or know what's coming, I can't say, oh, it's going to take a week or 10 days and it's going to cost you X, right? Like we don't really know until we actually look at the garment for those things. Part of that is just because when somebody says, I have, for instance, a tear in my jacket, um, is it 1 inch long? Is it 6 inches long? Is it near a seam? Did it cut a seam in half? There's just a lot of different details that are going to impact what work we have to have done. So we have had people send repairs in by mail, and we would continue to do that. We would just caution everybody to make sure you kind of speak to us on the phone so that we can, get an idea and can communicate with you about what the process is going to look like, so so that we can manage your expectations properly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, to have that conversation and to have a better understanding of what exactly needs to be repaired. But that is something that is really interesting, as far as being able to maybe use companies like yours or even just yours, especially if you're in New Hampshire, as a resource to repair gear. Because I know that it's really easy to mess up gear if you're not necessarily used to sewing or used to working in the textile space, and it can kind of make things worse down the lines if you have no idea what you're doing.
We've done some of those repairs as well. So they're kind of interesting. We always applaud everyone's effort, and usually they're not too bad. So yeah, you can make it a little worse, but the good news is that, as long as we have a clearly identified scope and things like that, we can usually get it done. And as long as you're flexible, for instance, like on jackets, we don't have nylon in stock of every color that your jacket might be. So yeah, it's going to be a patch or something. But with a little bit of flexibility there, we can definitely get you, I can't remember the number you used, we can definitely get you an extra 9 months out of whatever we repair. Hopefully we can get you several years out of whatever we repair, because we try to send it out and make sure our work is just as good as the day that thing came out of the original factory.
So, in terms of repair in the outdoor industry, I think that sometimes we hyper focus on the afterlife of a product, and that's kind of what we're doing with repairing. We are trying to extend that consumption period so we don't quite yet reach the afterlife of a product. But I know that we've talked about this before, that in the textile industry, there's a lot of waste before the product is even made. So just getting the fabric together to be sent to the manufacturer to make those different articles of clothing, there's a lot of waste that leads up to that. And I think that that is something that Burgeon does a really good job of addressing in their production model.
Yeah, thank you, Meg. Yeah, we do try to do that. There is a lot of waste in manufacturing, and for those who are listening who might not really understand, how apparel gets made without trying to be too pandemic, but we get fabric, and we might have, I'm making it up, but 100 yards of fabric on a roll, and that roll might be, I don't know, let's just say, 5 feet wide. So, big swath of fabric, and when you, first of all, one is that people cancel orders, fabrics get dipped in dyes to make sure they're the right color. Sometimes that process gets messed up, so your red doesn't come out red, it comes out, I don't know, orange red or something, and people will say, no, I don't want that. So that material turns into what we call dead stock. And so we use dead stock all the time. One is because we're a small growing manufacturer. Lead times are really long. It allows us to get products out in the marketplace quickly. And it also removes this waste from the system, to your point, right? So it's one less thing that we were going to order. We'll just take this other color in a product that we already like. So that's one way to help get some waste out of the system. So it's, one less spin of the yarn, one less truckload, all the things that you're talking about trying to reduce impact. The other thing is that when you actually cut that fabric, there's all these little pieces of waste that come out of it. So for instance, if I have 100 yards of fabric, I'm going to make this up, but I get one t-shirt per yard, but each yard of that fabric is not everything goes into the t-shirt. There's little scraps here and there because you can't line up all the pieces exactly. And the textile industry has made a lot of growth in this area, and the advent of laser cutters and things like that have really helped, cut that waste down, but there's still waste. And so we also use that waste. We have an outdoor scrunchie project where we use all these little scraps of material to make, outdoor scrunchies. Every one of them is different. So if you look at one on our website, that's not what you're going to get. But, we do that because that's a great way to, basically reduce waste, or maybe, repurpose waste into a product that people actually like. And so there's a lot of things we do at Burgeon, whether it's the purchasing of that dead stock, whether it's, using some of our waste to make products. We take little corners that we get and we make hats out of them and things like that. So we're constantly trying to find these pieces of, quote unquote, scrap and seeing what can we do with it. And, we'll continue to do that. It's a great way to, live our sustainability mantra. And it's also, a great way to kind of keep yourself, for lack of a better term, a little funky, right? Your products, some things, they're a little different and the colors might be a little off, but that's okay. That's who we are. That's what we stand for. That's what we believe in doing. And so we'll continue to do those things.
That would add a touch of uniqueness, and less, I guess, like make it a less standard product across the line. Whereas if it's the same product, you could fluctuate in colors coming in and out of stock, which is kind of fun. But I did have a question about the dead stock and those like little bits of fabric that get cut off. If someone like you isn't necessarily buying those waste materials, what actually happens to them?
Well, I don't dispose of them, so I'm not 100% sure. But usually, what happens is they're not wine, right? The fabric doesn't get better with age. So what I typically see, as a person who buys them, this is what I'm telling you what I see. I don't know about the wholesalers who hold it all. But what will happen is after the fabric reaches a certain age, it's basically considered to be scrap. And then at some point in time, it just gets thrown away. And the other thing about it is that its economic value goes down. So for instance, if I have an extra run of fabric that I just got from the factory, there's some type of period where I can still kind of sell it as first quality, and then it's going to deteriorate to second quality, and then it's going to basically deteriorate to scrap or as is quality or something, and then eventually it'll get thrown out. So some percentage of it gets thrown out. Some percentage of it is going to go to, I would argue, manufacturers who might not care as much about using all of the material because they're getting it at such a cheap price. So they're gonna, kind of look at it differently. So we try to just really use that product. One is to eliminate it from, just being thrown away. But number two is we can still use it in a highly efficient manner and try and get its highest and best use out of those products. So that's important to us. So in short, we're trying to save it from the landfill, and we're trying to save it from being excessive scrap, that then ends up in the landfill.
Yeah, and something that I really appreciate from really any outdoor company, but especially talking to you, is your willingness towards transparency. I think a lot of time as a consumer, there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that you just don't ever think about or you wouldn't be aware of, and you don't know are issues in textiles, especially. So, more companies that are being transparent, I think, helps give a clearer picture to the people that are buying that equipment or that clothing in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the hallmarks of our brand, just to be clear, is we believe in transparency. And I think nothing says it more. And Meg, I know you haven't seen our studio, but if you come in and we're actually surrounded by glass. Our studio where we make our clothes, basically half the walls are glass and windows are on the other side. And then there's some storage room and stuff like that. But you can actually see what's happening. If you walk in to purchase a product from us, you can look right onto, quote unquote, the factory floor. So you can see what we're doing. You can see how we do it. Sometimes it's a little messy. It's not exactly the Apple store, but that's okay because we're not Apple. We're a brand that's trying to make sure you can have a lot of faith in what we're doing, that you can see it, you can touch it, you can smell it. And not only that, you can meet the people who make your clothes. I mean, if you bring in a repair, you're going to meet, Marlise, who's going to be the one who most likely does that repair. So you're going to meet the people who are making an impact in your life, and that's what allows us to make an impact in our community.
Yeah, I haven't been there to actually see it, but if I'm ever in the Lincoln area, I'll definitely have to stop in because it sounds like a really interesting experience to be able to see that entire production from like you're shopping for the clothes and then you can actually see the clothes being made and repaired. It's really interesting to me. And it's not necessarily anything I have seen or heard of before. So that piques my interest more. But in that vein, are there other companies, they don't necessarily have to be within the outdoor industry, but other companies that follow a similar model to yours?
I cannot think of one off the top of my head, except, if you go like into the restaurant industry where, you can sit at quote unquote a kitchen table so you can see what happens in the kitchen. At some restaurants, I haven't seen that recently. Obviously, with COVID, those cases are probably all closed right now. But there's not too many places. The car dealer doesn't let you into the back shop when they're working on your car so you can see everything that happens, right? Usually those things are kept private. And we make them public, for a couple of reasons. One is we think, one is people want to see it. But number two is, it really makes us, it makes us live our credo, right? You know what I mean? We are only going to do things that we're proud of doing, and we're going to have them in full sight. And it's just one of those things in your back of your head. Yeah, when people come by, they're going to see exactly what we're doing, and we want to be darn proud of what they see. And so I think that's something that we just continually do, and I don't really see it in other industries, but I hope I do going forward. I think it's a great business model. I think it creates a unique bond with your customers. I think people really appreciate it. We have little kids come into our studio and they are enthralled. They see the machines, they see stuff being made. They want to know more about it. I mean, kids, as we all know, are just, naturally curious. Their parents love it. It's, I don't know what it is. It's like, show and tell on a grand scale or something. But it really makes for an experience, and it's an experience unlike any other. And I think for us, as a young brand that has been incredibly valuable, that's not why we did it. It's a really neat benefit from it is when you come into our store, you will have an experience that you have not had somewhere else. And by the way, if you come back a week later, it will be different. Because we're going to be making something different on the floor. You're going to see somebody putting, one product has sold out that you saw last week, and there's a new one that's getting put on the racks because that's what we just finished making. So it makes it a fun place to be. It makes it a fun place to work. It really bonds our team together in shared purpose and mission. I can't speak enough about how a lot of these things that, at least I haven't seen elsewhere have really pulled our team together. And it's our competitive advantage. You will not see, what we're doing at Burgeon at other places, but that's why you come to Burgeon and that's why you buy our products, because you can see, believe, feel, hear, smell, etc. What you're buying, the people you're supporting, you can see the mission in action. And you're just getting all those points of reinforcement, and it's a great story for us, and our customers love it. And so we love it when they come in, so we hope to see you there soon.
Yeah, it does sound like a pretty amazing experience just to see all of that. And I could see kids really buying into it. Just they don't really get that type of exposure to how things are made. And so being able to see it actually being made in front of you would be probably really exciting for them, but also for me, even though I'm not a child. Um, but you kind of mentioned that you haven't seen it anywhere before, and especially not in the outdoor industry, and that's what really makes you guys unique. But would you like to see it more?
I would. I think when you look at the outdoor industry, I mean, I can answer this on two levels. So one is, if you look at the outdoor industry, what, and I don't know, your story, Meg, or whatever. Like, I kind of know mine, right? But the connection to place and to nature is what drives my love of the outdoors, right? I have a connection. Part of that is on a higher level, metaphysical or something. In the White Mountains of New Hampshire, like, I kind of know these trails, I know these mountains, even the ones I haven't been on, I've been on the other side of or something. And you feel a real connection to place. And you feel like, these places are worth, one, the awe that they inspire, but two, our love to preserve and sustain and enhance them. And so, that's the connection. And I think, we look for that connection as people naturally, because we're social beings and we want to believe in things, right? We want to believe, in our friends, the friendship we have with our friends. We want to believe in, the love we have in our families. We want to, commune with our outdoors, or our shared sense of appreciation for art or music or culture or whatever it is. And I want to see it because I want to believe it. And I think that it really enhances the experience. It makes for a much deeper experience, which I think is what life's all about, right? It's a lot less transactional. It's a lot more, mission focused. And at the end of the day, I think that's what really drives people in the outdoor space together. There's a different type of, we're looking for something slightly different. We're not looking for mass consumerism. We understand that exists, but we're looking for those moments of peace and serenity that, take a little harder to get to. And that's why I think what Burgeon's doing is really important. It's, as I said, one of the reasons I founded the company. I really believe in these connections. But I also think it's what we as people want. We really want to be connected to things that we think are important. We want to know them. We want to understand them. We want to appreciate them. And we want to live them. And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I mean, you always hear of a brand's mission or something like that. And I guess their why. So a lot of companies start with their why, but you don't always necessarily get to see that. And so to be able to actually see the mission being played out in action in real time kind of definitely changes the connection that any consumer would have to any item. Like, it's the same type of thing if you go to the farmer's market and you have a relationship with a farmer, instead of just going to the grocer and picking up, I don't know, tomatoes and apples from who knows where.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, everyone wants to talk about their why, and your why is really important. But equally as important is how, right? Is how do you do these things, right? We know why you do them, but how do you do them, and what values are important to you, right? You can have a mission and a vision, but what are your values? And do you live your values, and do you really try to put them forward in everything that you do? Knowing that none of us are perfect and we all make mistakes, but do you really try to put those values and permeate them throughout everything your company does? And I think at Burgeon, we've been fortunate enough to do that fairly well. And then I think at the end of the day, that's really what makes us different. That is who we are. It's why we exist. That's who we are. That's how we do it. And that process is as important as anything else.
Yeah, and I think the only company or larger company, I guess, in the outdoor industry that I can think of that would have somewhat comparable processes to yours would, I guess, maybe be Patagonia, but it would not be in the same way and it's on a different scale.
No, I think that's a pretty good point or reference, whatever term you want to use. Patagonia has done a number of great things for the outdoor industry and broader industry in general. We need people like Patagonia. When Patagonia says we're only going to use organic cotton, I can't remember what they said, right? We're only going to use organic cotton in some year, and maybe that year's past us now. I don't remember, but whatever. People jump because they want to get Patagonia's business. I can come out tomorrow and say Burgeon's only going to use organic cotton and no one will care, right? So we need people like Patagonia. We need to ride on that wave so that we can make sustainable products. But to your point, or as you alluded to, what makes us different than Patagonia is, we're really focused on the local area where we are. I'm not trying to say Patagonia doesn't have local focus, but that's just all we are. Right. Patagonia is a big company. They got a lot going on. They're doing a lot of wonderful things. And I support them, with what they're doing. But what we're trying to do is really have an impact in our small community. We're trying to really drive our workforce. We're really trying to drive that relationship with our customers and our love of the outdoors. And to your point, we're just doing it in a different way. And that's okay, right? You can't, everybody's got to, put out there how they think about doing things and, why they think things are important and how they do them. And so we're going to continue to do our thing, and, we'll be rooting for Patagonia under our breath, I guess you could say. And hopefully they're rooting for us, even though we're, competitors. But in a lot of ways, we're not. I think that we're more collaborators than competitors, even though I don't think anyone at Patagonia would return my phone call. But we're kind of after the same thing with slightly different endpoints, but it's a love of the outdoors. It's a belief that there are a lot of things that have to happen in order for us to preserve this experience, so that not only we can enjoy it, but the generation behind us can enjoy it, and 10 generations after that. And we're both working towards that same goal, just in a slightly different way.
That really reminds me of this quote by Jane Goodall, and I probably say it too often, but it is think globally, but act locally. And I think a lot of times when, I don't know, if you're starting a company or if you work in business or anything like that, it's really tempting to kind of think really big and then try to like buy into the global market, because that is what we're taught, that is what you're supposed to do. But to really hone in on your local community has been more of a push as far as environmentalism and sustainability goes, is to kind of like build that foundation where you're at, and then it can kind of cause ripple effects outside of you, but you don't necessarily need to be the one that is implementing those structures all over the world.
I would agree with that. The other thing that I would say is that, I think in business, it's always really important, and whether it's business or your nonprofit, just in your own personal life, right? Where do you / in this case, where does Burgeon really have the ability to make an impact, right? And really make a difference, right? And how are you going to do that? And how can you do it in a way where you believe you're in a situation where you have a fair amount of control? I realize control is an elusive thing in life, right? But what I mean is that there's only certain factors we can control. And, at Burgeon, if we put 100% of our resources into suing the federal government over bears' ears like Patagonia did, we would have gotten nowhere. I don't think we could have paid the legal bills in the first 3 months that Patagonia probably paid their legal team to do, right? That's not our place. That's a great place for Patagonia to be, because they can do that, and I thank them for doing that. What we can do is we can create an incredibly dynamic experience for our consumers, for our employees, for our community, and then that gets permeated out into our environment. And then we can have an impact in our environment right there in the White Mountains. So as you said, think globally, act locally. What we can control is we can control our production, we can control our team, we can control the nonprofits we donate to, we can control where we donate our time on a personal level. Those are the factors right now for Burgeon that we can really control and where we can have impact. So that's where we're focused. I would love 10 years from now to be in Patagonia's shoes and be thinking about, okay, how can I do way more than what I'm doing right now and have an impact on a global scale? It's just not where we are. So we're going to focus on the things that we can control now. We're going to focus on the impact we can make now. And what we're going to try and do is make sure that whatever effort we're putting forth, we're getting the most quote unquote bang for our buck out of it. And if we do that, we will be a success. And, that's my job as a founder. That's my job, in running the company. Let's make sure we are putting forth the energy where we are going to have the most positive impact for our environment, for our people, and for our communities. That's our job. Well, I should say that's my job.
That's a really impactful and beautiful message, I guess, for other small business owners or any really up-and-coming industry leader, I would say, that to kind of hone in and focus in on like where you're needed and where you can have that greatest impact. And it will be interesting to kind of follow along and see how Burgeon Outdoor grows and changes and influences other people in the outdoor industry. And so with that, Rudy, how can people find you and where can they follow along with the Burgeon Outdoor message?
Sure. Well, I think as you mentioned, our website is burgeonoutdoor.com. So you can always head there and check out what we're doing, whether it be product-wise. You can check out our blog to see the impact we're having in our community and what we're doing in the White Mountains. You can follow us on social media. All of our social media is basically at Burgeon Outdoor. That's like our hashtag, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. So you can follow us there. But more importantly than that, I encourage you to come in and actually see what we're doing. So if you're ever in Lincoln, New Hampshire, or anywhere close by, please stop by and see us. I think you're going to see something you haven't seen before. I think it will be very rewarding. And I think you're going to walk away saying, this is a neat little thing that I just learned, or this is a neat little company that I just visit. And boy, do I wish there were more of them like that, because this was a lot of fun. Great people, great experience, great products.
That's great. And I will be sharing all that information in the episode description. So if you didn't catch all of that, don't worry. Just you can check it out down there. But thank you for taking your time today and jumping onto the podcast to talk about all these different ideas with me.
Meg, you're welcome. Thanks for having us on the podcast. Really was honored to be here. Enjoyed our conversation, and I'm just very grateful that you picked us out to be on the show. So thank you very much.
I just want to say thank you again to Rudy and Burgeon Outdoors for being willing to have a discussion about topics like this on the Outdoor Minimalist podcast, and thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, let me know. Leave a review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can now find me on Instagram at outdoor.minimalist.book. Follow there for daily updates, other educational resources, and to help build an outdoor community with the shared goal to create a better outdoor space as they recreate.